Welcome back to Hopeful Horizon, where every story brings you to the edge of your seat with heart-stopping twists and turns. Today, we unravel the dark side of corporate power and a shocking scandal that will leave you breathless. What happens when a billionaire playboy CEO humiliates a pregnant employee, only to have the truth come crashing down years later? This story is one of betrayal, revenge, and the fight for justice. As secrets unravel and power dynamics shift, get ready for a journey you won't soon forget. If you're ready for a tale filled with drama, emotion, and a touch of justice, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let us know what you think as the drama unfolds. The sun poured through the large glass windows of Adams Industries' towering skyscraper, reflecting off every polished surface in sight. Inside the sprawling high-tech office, employees bustled around, their footsteps echoing off the marble floors. The tension in the air was palpable. Everyone knew the importance of today's meeting. Jacob Adams, the infamous CEO, was set to make another grand announcement. Samantha Palmer sat quietly in the back of the room, her hands resting on the round curve of her pregnant belly. Her eyes darted to the front of the room, where Jacob Adams stood with all the confidence of a man who believed he was invincible. Tall, striking, and always impeccably dressed, Jacob was the kind of man who commanded attention without saying a word. For Samantha, however, Jacob's presence now only brought dread. Months ago, she had been in a whirlwind romance with him. Late-night dinners, private jets, and whispered promises of love had all seemed so real, until the day she had discovered she was pregnant. Her world had changed in an instant, but Jacob's remained the same. He had tossed her aside without a second thought, leaving her to deal with the pregnancy alone. As Jacob began speaking, his voice boomed through the room, every word calculated, every gesture commanding. The employees watched him with awe, hanging on his every syllable. He had the power to make or break anyone's career, and they all knew it. But as Jacob's eyes scanned the room, they landed on Samantha, and his expression shifted. His gaze dropped to her swollen belly, a smirk curling on his lips. The smirk quickly grew into something crueler. Well. Jacob's voice dripped with mockery as he gestured toward her. Looks like someone's been keeping a little secret. Samantha, dear, do you have something to share with the class? The room fell silent. All eyes turned toward Samantha, some filled with curiosity, others with judgment. Heat rushed to her face, her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to disappear, to sink into the floor and never be seen again. But Jacob wasn't finished. Ladies and gentlemen, he continued, his voice full of venom, it seems Miss Palmer here thought it'd be a good idea to trap a man with a baby. Classic move, isn't it? Laughter rippled through the room, though some employees remained silent, clearly uncomfortable with the scene unfolding before them. Samantha's hands trembled as she gripped the edges of the table, struggling to maintain her composure. She could feel the humiliation burning in her chest, but she refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. Without a word, Samantha rose from her seat and walked out of the conference room, her head held high. But as soon as she reached the safety of the hallway, tears filled her eyes. The humiliation, the shame, it was too much to bear. Yet in that moment, something shifted inside her. This wasn't over. Jacob had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The small apartment that Samantha and her son Ethan called home was humble but cozy. The warm scent of dinner filled the air as the two of them sat at their worn kitchen table, the soft glow of the overhead light casting long shadows across the room. It had been years since the incident at Adams Industries, but the memory was still fresh in Samantha's mind. "Mom, why don't you ever talk about him?" Ethan asked one evening. His fork paused halfway to his mouth. Samantha looked at her son, her heart aching at the sight of him. Ethan was growing into a man, his features sharp and determined. He looked so much like Jacob, his father, but Samantha had never told him the truth about who Jacob was. She didn't want her son to grow up in the shadow of a man like that. "Because there's nothing to talk about," she replied softly, her eyes meeting Ethan's. "He's not someone who deserves to be a part of your life." Ethan frowned, setting down his fork. "But I deserve to know, don't I? You've told me so much about everything else, but never about him." Samantha sighed, running a hand through her hair. He's not the man you think he is, Ethan. He hurt me. Hurt us. When I told him about you, he turned his back on me, on both of us. For a long moment, Ethan was silent, absorbing the weight of her words. Then, with a sharp edge to his voice, he said, "We should make him pay for that." Samantha blinked, taken aback by the intensity in her son's voice. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we can't let him get away with what he did. He humiliated you, Mom, and now he's out there, living his life like nothing ever happened, like we don't exist." Samantha hesitated. The thought of revenge had crossed her mind more times than she cared to admit, but she had always pushed it aside. She didn't want to become consumed by hatred or bitterness. But Ethan's words stirred something deep inside her, something she had buried long ago. "I don't know if revenge is the answer," she said carefully. "It won't change what happened." Ethan leaned forward, his eyes blazing. "It's not just about revenge. It's about justice. He ruined your life, Mom. We have to make him pay for that." As the days passed, Ethan's words lingered in Samantha's mind. She couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, it was time to confront Jacob and make him face the consequences of his actions. But how? One night, as she lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling, the plan began to form in her mind. It wouldn't be easy, but with Ethan's help, they could do it. They could bring Jacob Adams to his knees. The sprawling lobby of Adams Industries was a sea of marble and glass, its opulence reflecting the wealth and power of the man who owned it. Ethan stood at the entrance, adjusting the collar of his shirt as he took in the scene before him. It was his first day as an intern, and despite the nerves fluttering in his stomach, he couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. He was inside the empire now, right where he needed to be. Samantha had watched him prepare for this moment for months, her heart swelling with pride and fear. She had raised Ethan to be strong, to fight for what was right, but she hadn't expected him to take on such a monumental task. Still, she knew he was ready. "Good luck," she had whispered to him that morning as he left the apartment, her hand lingering on his shoulder. "Be careful." Ethan had smiled, the same smile that had always reassured her. "I've got this, Mom." Now, as he walked through the doors of Adams Industries, Ethan couldn't help but feel the weight of his plan pressing down on him. His mother had warned him that this wasn't just about revenge, but he couldn't shake the desire to see Jacob Adams suffer the way Samantha had suffered. He was determined to make it happen. Over the next few weeks, Ethan kept his head down, doing everything he could to impress his supervisors and gain the trust of those around him. It wasn't long before Jacob Adams himself took notice of the bright, ambitious intern. "Ethan, is it?" Jacob said one afternoon as he passed by Ethan's desk, his eyes scanning the young man. "You're doing good work here. Keep it up." Ethan nodded, suppressing the surge of emotions that threatened to overwhelm him. This was the man who had abandoned his mother, the man who had humiliated her in front of an entire company. And now, he didn't even recognize his own son. "Thank you, sir," Ethan replied, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. As the weeks turned into months, Ethan became more and more entrenched in the company, earning Jacob's trust and learning the inner workings of Adams Industries. He kept his distance from Jacob as much as possible, knowing that the time for confrontation would come, but for now, he needed to be patient. And then one day, the opportunity presented itself. The office was dimly lit, the evening sun casting long shadows across the floor, as Ethan sat across from Jacob Adams in the CEO's luxurious office. Papers were scattered across the desk, and Jacob leaned back in his chair, sipping a glass of whiskey. "You've done well, Ethan," Jacob said, his voice thick with approval. "I'm thinking of promoting you. You've got potential, kid." Ethan's heart raced in his chest, his fingers tapping lightly against the armrest of his chair. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment when he would finally reveal the truth. He had rehearsed it in his mind 1,000 times, but now that it was here, the weight of it all pressed down on him. "Thank you, sir," Ethan said, his voice calm and controlled. "But there's something I need to tell you." Jacob raised an eyebrow, setting down his glass. "Oh? What's that?" Ethan took a deep breath, his eyes locking onto Jacob's. "You've known me for months now, but there's something you don't know. My mother is Samantha Palmer." The name hung in the air like a heavy weight, and for a moment, Jacob didn't react. Then slowly, the realization dawned on him, and his expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. "Samantha Palmer?" Jacob repeated, his voice low and dangerous. "What are you talking about?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "You humiliated her. You abandoned her. And now, I'm here to make you pay for what you did." Jacob stared at Ethan, his face pale, as the truth settled in. "You're her son?" Ethan nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. "Yes, and you're going to pay for what you did to her. I've spent months learning everything about this company, and I know enough to bring you down." Jacob's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, a flicker of fear crossed his face. "You don't know what you're getting yourself into, kid. I'm not someone you can just—" "I'm not a kid," Ethan interrupted, his voice sharp. "I'm your son, and I'm not afraid of you." The tension in the room was thick as Jacob Adams sat frozen in disbelief. His gaze was fixed on Ethan, his mind racing to process the revelation. The powerful billionaire, always in control of every situation, suddenly felt the ground slipping beneath him. For years, he had thought he'd left his past behind, that his cruel actions had no consequences. But here, in his own office, sat the son he didn't want, now an adult, determined to exact revenge. Jacob's voice was tight, the usually confident tone now laced with unease. "You think you can destroy me? You're just an intern, a kid with a grudge. You have no idea how this world works." Ethan leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with the fire of purpose. "I'm not just an intern anymore. I've been watching you, learning everything about this company. I've seen your secrets, the way you've manipulated people, the shady deals, and the false promises. It's all there, in black and white." Jacob's jaw clenched, his hand gripping the edge of his desk. "What do you want, Ethan? Is this about money? Are you looking for a payout?" Ethan shook his head, his voice calm yet cold. "This isn't about money. This is about justice. For my mother, for me, and for everyone you've walked over. Your empire is built on lies, and I'm going to make sure the world knows." Jacob tried to regain his composure, but the panic was evident in his eyes. "You think you can take me down with some accusations? You have no proof. It's your word against mine, and I have an army of lawyers who can bury you before you even get started." Ethan smirked, the confidence in his voice growing stronger. "I've already spoken to journalists. I have emails, documents, and testimonies from people you've wronged over the years. You're not as untouchable as you think. Once this story breaks, the media will tear you apart. Your reputation, your career, and everything you've built will be ruined." Jacob's face drained of color as the full weight of Ethan's words sank in. For the first time in his life, Jacob Adams felt the cold grip of fear tightening around his heart. He had spent years climbing to the top, believing he was invincible, but now his past was catching up to him in the form of his own son. "I made a mistake," Jacob said, his voice lower now, almost pleading. "I was wrong about your mother, about everything. Let's talk about this. Settle it quietly. I can offer you anything you want. We don't have to destroy each other." Ethan leaned back in his chair, folding his arms as he studied the man who had caused his mother so much pain. There was no remorse in Jacob's words, only fear of losing his fortune and reputation. The billionaire wasn't sorry for what he had done. He was only sorry that he had been caught. "You think you can buy your way out of this, just like you bought your way out of everything else," Ethan said, his voice steady and unwavering. "But this time, money won't save you. The truth is coming out, and when it does, the world will see you for who you really are." Jacob stood abruptly, knocking his glass of whiskey onto the floor as he pounded his fists on the desk. "You're making a mistake, boy. I can destroy you with one phone call." Ethan remained calm, meeting Jacob's gaze with unwavering determination. "Maybe you could have before, but not anymore. I've spent years preparing for this moment. You have no idea what's coming." Just then, the door to the office creaked open, and Samantha stepped inside. The years had been kind to her. Despite everything she had been through, she stood tall, exuding strength and grace. Her eyes met Jacob's, and for the first time in years, she felt no fear. Jacob's face twisted in shock and anger as he stared at Samantha. You You set this up." Samantha smiled softly, her voice calm yet filled with resolve. "I didn't have to set anything up, Jacob. You did that all on your own. You thought you could humiliate me, break me, and walk away without consequences. But I'm still standing, and now it's your turn to face the truth." Jacob looked between Ethan and Samantha, his face a mask of disbelief. "You both think you're better than me? You're nothing without me. I built everything. This company, this empire, you can't take it from me." Samantha stepped forward, her voice firm but gentle. "We're not trying to take anything from you, Jacob. The truth is, you've already lost everything that really matters. Your integrity, your decency. We just want the world to see the man behind the mask." Ethan stood up beside his mother, their united front unmistakable. "This isn't just about us anymore, Dad. This is about everyone who suffered because of you. You always told people they couldn't beat you, that you were untouchable. But now, the truth is going to come out, and you'll have to face the consequences of your actions." Jacob stood there, stunned, as Samantha and Ethan walked out of the office together, leaving him alone with the weight of his crumbling empire. The world was about to change for Jacob Adams, and for the first time in his life, there was nothing he could do to stop it. Months passed since that fateful day in Jacob's office. The scandal surrounding Adams Industries had become a national sensation, plastered across every news outlet and social media platform. The headlines screamed betrayal, corruption, and scandal as Jacob's once impenetrable empire collapsed under the weight of public scrutiny. The revelation of Jacob Adams abandoning his own son and humiliating Samantha had been enough to destroy his reputation, but the discovery of his illegal dealings had sealed his fate. Investigations were launched, lawsuits were filed, and Jacob's wealth and power quickly evaporated as his empire crumbled around him. Ethan stood on the balcony of his new apartment, overlooking the bustling city below. The cool evening breeze ruffled his hair as he reflected on how much had changed in such a short time. His plan had worked. Jacob Adams had been exposed for the fraud and tyrant he truly was. But the victory felt different than he had expected. There was no sense of triumph, no gloating satisfaction in watching Jacob fall. Instead, there was a quiet peace, a sense of closure that came from knowing that justice had finally been served. Samantha joined him on the balcony, her hand resting on his shoulder as they watched the sunset together. "How do you feel?" she asked softly. Ethan sighed, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Relieved. I thought revenge would feel different, but now I just feel free." Samantha nodded, understanding the weight of his words. "You've done something remarkable, Ethan. You stood up for what was right. I'm so proud of you." Ethan turned to face her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mom. You've always been there for me, no matter what." Samantha smiled, her eyes glistening with emotion. "And I always will be." As they stood together, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Ethan realized that their victory wasn't in Jacob's downfall. It was in their own strength, their resilience, and their love for each other. They had faced the darkest parts of their past, and now they were ready to move forward into a brighter future. Jacob Adams had tried to break them, but in the end, it was his own greed and cruelty that had destroyed him. Samantha and Ethan, on the other hand, had found something far more valuable than wealth or power. They had found their own strength, and they had each other. And that, Ethan knew, was worth more than anything. Thank you for joining us on this unforgettable journey of truth, betrayal, and redemption. Samantha and Ethan's story reminds us that justice isn't always swift, but when it comes, it's powerful. Their courage and resilience in the face of betrayal shows that love and truth will always prevail over greed and corruption. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs a reminder that even the most powerful people can fall when they lose sight of what truly matters. Don't forget to subscribe to Hopeful Horizon for more inspiring stories, and remember, no matter the odds, justice can always find a way. Stay hopeful